Hello, my name is Jonathan Cruz, and today I want to go over some of the ways in which we can interact with our panels in InstrumentStudio. InstrumentStudio is companion software for NI's PXI platform and allows you to fully control your instruments all in one place. Now, really quick, let's go over the hardware I have here. So here I have my PXI chassis, and I have a waveform generator connected in a simple loopback to an oscilloscope. And you can actually see that here on my screen. I have my oscilloscope in the large panel, and I have the waveform generator in the small panel. Now, let's say maybe I'm not super familiar with this hardware. It's a little new to me, and I'm not sure how to connect things right off the bat. Well, a really nice feature of InstrumentStudio is I can go here to the settings gear, and I can actually go over the particular instrument panel, and here I have access to the user manual, specifications, and the pinouts. So if I click this, I get a diagram of the pinouts, as well as some of the detailed information to go along with it. So this just helps me get started a little bit quicker. So now that I have a better idea of how I want my instruments connected, well, I can go here and start to configure my output on, say, my waveform generator. So here, I want to set this to a 1 kilohertz sine wave, and let's say 5 volts peak to peak. Now, before I enable this output, I want to take note of the output impedance here of 50 ohms. Now, the reason for this is that I want to make sure it's matched to my scope's input impedance. So if I go to my scope channel where my waveform generator is connected in a loopback, which is channel 0 in this case, and I click these 3 dots, here I have access to all the settings I would expect for one of my scopes. So I can go ahead and set the input impedance to 50 ohms. Okay, so now that I've configured my input impedance, I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to enable the output on my waveform generator. Okay, so now we're getting the input into the oscilloscope, and we can see that there's something here. I'm going to go ahead and click Auto, and this is automatically going to configure my time per division and volts per division. Okay, great. So now that we have a signal being generated on the waveform generator, and we can read that in our scope, let's say I wanted to give myself a little bit more space to be able to view this display here. Well, another feature I want to cover here is if we go to the waveform generator, and I click this Duplicate Panel button, what it does is it creates a new tab here where all of the settings and the configurations from that previous panel is copied over. So now I can go right back to this original tab, and I can go to the settings gear in the waveform generator, and I can delete that panel. Okay, so now we have a lot more space to be able to view our display, and we also still have that waveform being generated and displayed on the scope. It's being read, so this panel is doing its job here. So now let's say that I'm happy with my waveform that I'm generating here. Now, what I can do is actually go to the settings gear here. I can go to export, and I have the option to be able to export this as a driver configuration to, say, LabVIEW. So I don't have to bother with creating a full new configuration in my code. I can actually just pull this in here to simplify my code as a configuration file and import it there. The other option I have is to actually export this to test stand for some advanced automation. So InstrumentStudio actually has some basic automation features built into it where you can do some measurement sequencing. However, as your projects evolve in complexity, you may want to be able to export that to test stand for the much more advanced features there. Okay, and so now that we've gone over exporting, let's say I've generated my waveform, I'm happy with it, the configuration, I exported it. Now I want to take a screenshot to be able to include that with some documentation for my say, test stand sequencing. Well, I have this convenient capture screenshot button here, and what this allows me to do is take a screenshot, it automatically saves it to my clipboard, and I can paste it in, say, that report or documentation or even an email if I needed to. The other option I have here, which I'm going to go to my oscilloscope panel for this, is this capture data button. So this capture data button will track all of the measurements and log it to a TDMS or CSV file that is named and timestamped. So if I click this, it'll save it here, and it saves it as either a TDMS or CSV file. If that's what I prefer, I can configure that in InstrumentStudio settings, as well as a screenshot that is also dated and timestamped that takes the screenshot of this panel, so we can use that later. Okay, so in conclusion, InstrumentStudio gives us full control of our PXI system and gives us accessibility to the instruments through straightforward measurements, export configurations for code, or automation, as well as some data logging. Thank you very much for joining me today.